So we shall read one verse from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 9, text 14. Please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Please repeat. Satatam
Satatam
Kirtayanto
Kirtayanto
Mam
Mam
Yatantas
Yatantas
Cha
Cha
Shudavrataha
Shudavrataha
Namasyantas
Namasyantas
Cha
Cha
Mam
Mam
Bhaktya
Bhaktya
Nitya
Nitya
Yukta
Yukta
Upasate
Upasate
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Yatantas Chadrida Vrataha
Yatantas Vrindavrataha
Namasyantas Chamam Bhaktya
Namasyantas Mam Bhaktya
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Yatantas Chadrida Vrataha
Yatantas Vrindavrataha
Namasyantas Chamam Bhaktya
Namasyantas Mam Bhaktya
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Satatam Kirtayanto Mam
Yatantas Chadrida Vrataha
Yatantas Vrindavrataha
Namasyantas Chamam Bhaktya
Namasyantas Mam Bhaktya
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Nitya Yukta Upasate
Satatam
Satatam
Always
Always
Kirtayanta
Kirtayanta
Chanting
Chanting
Mam
Mam
About me
About me
Yatanta
Yatanta
Fully endeavoring
Fully endeavoring
Cha
Cha
Also
Also
Vridavrata
Vrindavrataha
With determination
With determination
Namasyanta
Namasyanta
Offering obeisances
Offering obeisances
Cha
Cha
and
and
Mam
Mam
Me
Me
Bhaktya
Bhaktya
in devotion
in devotion
Nitya Yukta
Nitya Yukta
perpetually engaged
perpetually engaged
Upasate
Upasate
worship.
Worship
Translation Always chanting my glories. I'll read it through once and then we can do a response later. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination Bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Now please repeat. Always chanting my glories,
always chanting my glories,
endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls, perpetually worship me, with devotion. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. Now, I don't know how common rubber stamps are, but anyway, you get the idea. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping or stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when there's more to the purport, but I'll stop and comment here. When we were in Bombay with Srila Prabhupada, for some time he was staying at Seaface Park, which was previously known as Mafalal Park, in an apartment that was given to him for his use. And every evening he would speak to the devotees about the nectar of devotion. But occasionally, if someone heard that Srila Prabhupada was there speaking and came in, Srila Prabhupada would change the level of discourse from the nectar of devotion to the Bhagavad Gita. Because the nectar of devotion is really for devotees who are practicing. And the Bhagavad Gita is meant to bring people to the final stage of becoming devotees of Krishna. So one evening, a very big figure in Hinduism came up to the talk. And he asked Srila Prabhupada a question, that India is a land of Mahatmas, yet India has so many problems. I mean, ordinarily one would think in a land of Mahatmas, everything should be auspicious and beautiful. But India is a land of Mahatmas, and there are so many problems. What is the reason? And Srila Prabhupada replied, the reason there are so many problems is that you do not know who is a Mahatma and who is not. And this verse and the previous verse describe who a Mahatma actually is. And coming back to the nectar of devotion, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, the author, has given a definition of pure devotional service. Every scripture has a verse which is called the Paribhasa Sutra, which means a verse that you could say is the essence of the text and governs all the other verses in the text. And all the other verses can be read in relation to that verse. So Rupa Goswami has given the definition of pure devotional service. Anya vilasita sunyam dhyana karmadyanavritam anukulyena krishna anushilanam bhakti rutama. And we should know this definition because we are all endeavoring to engage in pure devotional service. So, the first word is anya vilasita. Now, this is explained in his commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that anya vilasa means without any other desire. So why did Rupa Goswami add the suffix ita? And the reason is that, yes, one should engage in pure devotional service without any other desire. But the ita means under ordinary circumstances. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the example that ordinarily, when we engage in devotional service, pure devotional service, we do not pray for anything material. We don't pray for anything for ourselves or our family, material. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in an extreme situation, one might. And he gives the example that if one is being attacked by someone, with deadly weapons, one might pray to Krishna for protection. But that is not a deviation from the principle of pure devotional service. That's covered by the ita, anyavilasita. Because in ordinary circumstances one wouldn't, but in some extreme situation one might. And it's not considered a violation of the principles of pure devotional service. So, anya vilasita sunyam. Sunyam means with none. Anya vilasita sunyam dhyana karmadi anavritam. So karma is fruit of activities. Jnana, in this context, is mental speculation. And adi means, and so on. And anavritam means not covered by. In other words, if someone thinks that he or she has to engage in jnana or karma to be successful in bhakti, that is covering the pure, independent nature of bhakti, which does not depend on karma or jnana or any other process. So, we have to have that faith. The beginning of devotional service is faith, ado shraddha. And that faith is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita as, the firm, confident faith that just by engaging in devotional service, one need not engage in any other activity. So that is shraddha, ado shraddha. First comes faith. So, jnana karmadi anavritam means that, what one does not wrongly believe that one must engage in karma or jnana in order to be successful in bhakti. Now there too, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very interesting example of a son whose father has died. Now, properly speaking, assuming that the father is not a devotee, properly speaking, the son has no obligation to do the last rites of the father because he's engaged in pure devotional service. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point that if he doesn't, perform the last rites, people will criticize, general people will criticize that, he's become a devotee of Krishna, he doesn't even do the last rites for his father. So with that consideration, the devotee can, perform those rituals, not because he thinks that if he doesn't, his bhakti will be incomplete. If he thought his bhakti would be incomplete, that would be covering bhakti, the independent nature of bhakti. But if he knows that his bhakti is complete without doing it, but he does it just for the sake of popular sentiment, so people will think, oh yes, he's a good son, he's a devotee of Krishna, but he's a good son, he's doing his duty. So with that consideration, one can do it. So, anya vilasita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena. Anukulyena means favorably. Favorably means one should serve Krishna as Krishna desires, not according to our own whimsies or fancies or speculation. Somehow I've gotten onto the Muffet House here, and I should mention that Arvind Mafatlal's son, Rishikesh Mafatlal, is a wonderful devotee in Mumbai named Krishna Chandra Das. So, I mean, but Arvind Mahalal had a brother, and I went to meet him, to enroll him as a life member in his office. And he was sort of boasting that he wouldn't take even tea without putting tulsi leaves in it. So that was, I mean, we don't take tea, that's the point. But he didn't understand that, apparently, or he didn't want to acknowledge it. But he was trying to show me how devotional he was, that he wouldn't even take tea without putting tulsi leaves in it. And actually, tulsi can only be offered to Krishna. I mean, you can't even offer tulsi to Radharani. You can place tulsi in her hand to offer to Krishna, but tulsi can be offered only to Krishna or Vishnu. So he was speculating a bit. So I'm coming back to the point of anukuyena, favorable. It should be done both in a favorable mood, and also it should be favorable to Krishna's pleasure. Now, it can be done I'll give an example. In the early days of ISKCON in New York, the devotees entered into negotiation for some property with a gentleman named Mr. Payne or Price. Price? Mr. Price. And one day, Mr. Price phoned, and Srila Prabhupada took the call, though he didn't usually speak on the phone, but he took the call, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Price, I'm always thinking of you." And afterwards, the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, "Is that true, that you're always thinking of him?" He said, "Yes, just like Kamsa was always thinking of Krishna." So Kamsa was Krishna conscious, because he was always thinking of Krishna, but not favorably. So therefore it cannot be considered as bhakti. It was not anukul. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also gives the example of when Mother Yashoda was feeding baby Krishna, and then the milk on the fire began to boil over, so she set baby Krishna aside to tend to the milk on the fire. And baby Krishna became very upset and angry. So, was Mother Yasoda acting outside of pure devotional service? Were her actions pratikul instead of anukul? But they were anukul, because first of all, her mood was favorable to Krishna. Whatever she was doing was for Krishna's pleasure. And although Krishna outwardly was upset and angry, but inwardly he was actually pleased with her pure devotion. So that was anukul. So anyavilasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena Krishna. So pure devotional service must be rendered to Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion, and in the Nectar of Devotion, in some parts, Srila Prabhupada has incorporated a lot of the commentaries on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, especially by Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So, in discussing this verse, Anyavilasika Samyam, Srila Prabhupada does elaborate, and he does incorporate their commentaries. So, Krishna. So what does Krishna mean? Of course, Krishna means Krishna. But as Srila Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion, it means Krishna, his expansions, like, Ramadi Mushi, Shukalani, Mainatishtan, so many expansions, including Rama and others. And his name, his forms, his qualities, his pastimes, and his pure devotees. So Srila Rupa Goswami says that all of the items of devotional service that can be performed in relation to Krishna can also be performed in relation to these various other manifestations of Krishna, including his pure devotees. So Krishna Anushilanam. So Anushilanam means cultivation. It's a cultivation. It's not that we can do it without any concentrated effort. It's a cultivation. And anu, this word anu comes up frequently. We discussed it in Columbus in relation to the verse Anukirtanam. So anu means to follow, and anu also means continuous. So anushilana means it's a continuous cultivation. And that is mentioned in this verse in relation to Mahatmas. I'm speaking about pure devotional service because so many of the elements of pure devotional service are incorporated in this one verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So here it says Nitya Yukta, perpetually engaged. So that's like Anushilana. It's continuous, no gap. If there's a gap, then that's not pure devotional service. If it's, whatever the percentage, say, 50% for me, 50% for Krishna, that's not pure devotional service. 99% for Krishna and 1% for me, it's getting close. But pure devotional service is everything for Krishna, nothing for me. And Srila Prabhupada said that was his motto. There was a very interesting incident that took place in Calcutta when I was there. At that time, the temple president became very engrossed in business activities. I mean, we were poor in those days, ISKCON. He became very engrossed in business activities to try to raise funds for the temple. And in the course of that preoccupation, he was neglecting the devotees. And the devotees were suffering a lot, and they were really just waiting for Srila Prabhupada to come. And eventually Srila Prabhupada came, and he called a meeting. Different devotees met him, and then eventually he called a meeting with all the devotees and asked them to express themselves. And he listened very sympathetically, and he said there should be like a management committee. It was Tamal Krishna Goswami, Yamuna Devi, and myself, and we should meet every week and discuss all the problems and write our resolutions in a minute book, and then we should follow what we decide. He's listening very sympathetically. At one stage, Tamal Krishna Goswami, he was the GBC, so he said, you know, I guess whatever, got a little defensive. So he said, Srila Prabhupada, I was just trying to execute your divine grace's will. And Srila Prabhupada looked at him and sort of sarcastically said, is it my divine grace's will that all the devotees should be disturbed? So he listened very sympathetically and made those practical suggestions. But then his mood changed. And he said that, you know, if we discuss these practical problems, you could say material problems, too much, then, you know, we won't be chanting and hearing about Krishna, and our spiritual life will be compromised. And then he spoke about how much he had suffered. You know, he went to America by ship, he had 2 heart attacks at sea. And even in America, he suffered a lot. He had ringing in his ears, and other things. He said, you know, which I don't want to discuss. But he said, I never complained, because my motto was always everything for Krishna and nothing for me. So I never complained. So though he was sympathetic in a way, he was sympathetic to the devotees' complaints, but then he brought the discussion to the next level, which is, you know, if your motto is everything for Krishna, nothing for me, then you won't complain. Once, in his introductions, Prem-Vilas Prabhu talks about my ashram and Carpinteria, and it's a haven for senior devotees to come. And it's true, there is a nice facility, and many senior devotees do come and spend time. And one of them is His Holiness Niranjana Swami. And so usually we're pretty good with our service to the visiting devotees. But on one occasion there was a little lapse. I think they didn't take his laundry to wash. Maybe they didn't do some cleaning or something. They didn't say anything. So when I found out about these lapses in his service, I asked him, you know, why didn't you say anything? And he said, you know, I always feel I don't deserve anything, so I never ask for anything, which is similar mood. So, yeah, it's a very good, wonderful example. So coming back to the purport here, when the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, his transcendental qualities, and his uncommon pastimes. So this is all included in Krishna. When we talk about pure devotional service to Krishna, Krishna includes all of these different features. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who is attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, is not described as a Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. So I'll just give you a preview of the next verse. Well, the next verse, it forms part of a series of verses, but the purport of those verses is that, you know, they can worship these other features, but ultimately they're worshiping Krishna, and he's the goal. So, the Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or human being. That is devotion. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnus, and Smaranam, remembering him. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. So determination, that's Dhridavrataha. That verse Dhridavrataha appears elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada comments that there are certain fasting days, like Janmashtami and others. And so an example of Dhridavrataha, strong determination, is to fast on those days. But all of our activities, to be done properly and systematically and consistently, require Dhridavrata. Like Srila Prabhupada said, chanting is easy. The process of chanting is easy. But the determination to chant is not so easy. So Dhridavrata, determination. There was a young man in Dallas who, he wanted to chant. I mean, his parents are devotees, and he's an aspiring devotee, aspiring disciple. And he would say he wants to chant, and he knows he should chant, but when the time comes to chant, he does something else. So it reminded me of what Srila Prabhupada said. Chanting is easy, but the determination to chant is not so easy. But I consulted His Holiness Ritatpujya Swami, who deals a lot with young people, and he said that I should suggest, and I'll do it when I go back, that he should do that chanting first thing in the morning before anything else. And then it'll be done, he won't be distracted, and so we'll try that. Where there's a will, there's a way. So here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that Dridavrata, such a Mahatma, has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. What are the 5 transcendental rasas?
Madhurya.
Okay,
Satya, Dasya, Shanta.
let's go in order and along with the Sanskrit, say the English.
The Shanta, neutrality. Savitri.
Okay, all right.
Santa, neutrality. All means Dasya, Sakya, friendship. Vatsalya, parental. Madhurya, conjugal.
Yes. So, Dridavrata. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. So you can have a rasa or relationship with Krishna as Shantarasa is sort of like a neutral service. It's service, but it doesn't involve an active effort. Like there are descriptions in the Bhagavatam how when Krishna goes through the forest of Vrindavan, the trees give him shade. So you could say those trees are in Shantaras. They're doing service, but they just do it where they are, you could say. Then Dasyaras, servant. Krishna has so many servants. Like in Mother Yashoda's household, there are servants that help her dress Krishna, things like that. Chitrak and Raktak are famous servants. Then Sakya, friendship. So Krishna has so many cowherd boyfriends, like Subal, Sridham. And Vatsalya, parental. Of course, Nanda and Yashoda are the principal ones. And there are many others who are elders who have that mood of parental affection. And then Madhurya Ras, conjugal relationship like Srimati Radharani and the other gopis. There's a lot of, I don't know to what degree they understood it, but there's a lot of Madhurya Ras in tonight's performances by the children. Okay, so, such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything, in the service of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So this is a very important point that we should engage all of our activities. So that means our bodies, our minds, and our words in the service of Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. Oh, here it is. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadasi, and on the appearance day of the Lord. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission to the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental world. This is going back home, back to Godhead. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the second verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance and austerity. He can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or a sannyasi or a brahmachari. In any position and anywhere in the world, he can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. So in Calcutta, I was based in Calcutta for a while before Bombay, and so we put on a big Pandau program, and to raise funds for the Pandau program, I collected ads to be published in a souvenir. And of course, it's not just ads, there's also text. And in that, I mentioned, I quoted a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. There's another verse about Mahatmas. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanamam prapadite vasudeva sarvamiti samadurlabha. That anyone who surrenders to Krishna is a Mahatma, but not even just an ordinary Mahatma, but Sudurlabha, a rare Mahatma. So I put that in the souvenir, and when Srila Prabhupada read it, he was very pleased. He said, yes, my disciples are rare Mahatmas. So you all are, I'm sure, also rare Mahatmas. So it's very nice for the Mahatmas to get together and glorify Krishna, which is what Mahatmas do. And especially chant his holy names.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. So are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Here, Previlas.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful lecture. Regarding the not complaining, in India, the divorce rate, and I was asked this by a woman, regarding the standing of Hinduism not allowing divorces. Yet, from my experience, I remember specifically one of my god sisters, on the initiator of Srila Prabhupada also. She was in an abusive relationship with one of our god brothers, and Prabhupada allowed her to move away from the premises of her abusive husband. So my answer to that situation is that in India, the structure of the family is a lot different than it is in the Western countries. You have a lot of support, marriages are arranged, astrologically made compatible or seek compatibility. But the rate, statistically, the rate of divorce in India is very low amongst the Hindus, and I don't know about the Muslims. So the question is, does ISKCON recommend for Westerners who their husbands are drug addicts and alcoholics and beat them repeatedly to stay in that relationship and not to seek a divorce. And again, the circumstances under which Hindus live with the strong family ties on both sides are totally different. So would you say that that philosophy of no divorce applies to Westerners also, and that we should abide by that ruling or idea and live in an abusive relationship where a woman gets beat repeatedly and live like that?
What do you think?
I will not. I will say yes. This is a Western country, it's a different environment than it is in India, and that they should seek a divorce. But that's.
But in India, it's okay if the husband beats his wife. No, I didn't mean to be facetious, but I'm just trying to clarify what you're actually
Well, it's a
saying.
tough, I'm in a situation that this was asked, and
Can you speak in?
well, yeah, I need help. What's the right answer? I mean,
Okay, all right. Well, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a chapter called Ideal Family Life. And that chapter very nicely describes the duty of the wife. And it says that it is the duty of a chaste wife to serve her husband who is not fallen. So, although that is the principle, it's the duty of a chaste wife to serve her husband, and that's good for her, good for her husband, good for the marriage. But that condition is there, who is not fallen. And regarding divorce, but of course, one thing I could add that in the case you gave, there are alternatives between, in an in-between area between the wife being abused by the husband and divorce. And that could involve, marital counseling. There's also, you mentioned about arranged marriages and astrology and compatibility. So in recent, relatively recent times, ISKCON has introduced premarital counseling, which is very useful. In premarital counseling, the prospective wife and prospective husband are given a questionnaire with whatever, maybe 200 questions. This actually was adapted in ISKCON from Christians. And they did this, and after they started doing this, the divorce rate amongst the Christians was drastically reduced. And so many of the leaders in ISKCON recommend this premarital counseling. So in the premarital counseling, each party is given a questionnaire of maybe 200 questions related to different aspects of the marriage. And then the counselor will go over their responses with them and show the areas of compatibility and incompatibility. There's one case, Giriraj Swami told me about, So one area of the compatibility in the questionnaires relates to finance. So the husband said, whatever the wife earns, she has to give to me, and I control all the family finances. And the prospective wife said, yeah, I'll contribute what I have to, towards the common household expenses, but whatever is left over after that, I keep, and I decide how to use that. And in that particular case, it was like a deal breaker. I mean, the prospective husband wasn't ready to compromise on that point, and neither was the prospective wife. So it's very good. It brings out, that's just one example, it just brings out different, and it could bring up points, that the couple might feel shy to bring up themselves, if they're in a face-to-face meeting. So that premarital counseling is good. I'm one of the senior devotees who recommends it. But then there's also counseling to couples who are having difficulty. And that's why I'm saying, between the husband being abusive to the wife and divorce, there could be a stage in between where they go for counseling. Could be the husband has an anger problem or whatever, but it's possible that counseling could help. There's some very good devotee counselors that can help. But yes, in the extreme, although in principle we don't agree to divorce, but in the extreme it may be the only practical solution. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Thanks, Prabhuji, for explaining Mahatma, that how should we interpret that. So when I was grasping that what is Mahatma and what is his qualities, suddenly it's clicked in my mind Sudama's example, because Sudama approached Krishna for himself and for his family. So I was thinking that how should I interpret, and at the same time we are saying that Mahatma shouldn't ask for himself or shouldn't ask for his family, but it just clicked in my mind that Sudama did that. So how should I interpret that episode in context of Mahatma?
The way I remember the story, Sudama's wife, they were very poor, of course very poor, and Sudama's wife wanted Sudama to visit his old school friend, Krishna. But she didn't want him to visit Krishna for her sake, but she felt sorry to see her husband so always going hungry and emaciated. So she did ask him to go to see Krishna, but not for her sake, for her husband's sake. And when you go to Krishna, you have to give some offering, and they didn't have anything, so they borrowed some chipped rice or something, which Sudama kept wrapped in his cloth. And so he went to see Krishna. But when he went to see Krishna, he didn't ask for anything. They were just remembering their old days together in the Gurukul. And Krishna, the omniscient Lord, saw that he had something in his cloth. So he said, did you bring me anything? And Sudama was very ashamed because it was such a meager offering. But Krishna took it forcibly, and he had a morsel. And then he was going to have another one, and Rukmini stopped him, his queen, Rukmini. And there's sort of two sides to it, as the commentaries explain. One side was she felt that just by that one morsel, Krishna would feel so obliged to Sudama that he would want to give Sudama everything. And, more than Rukmini, the goddess of fortune, could afford, so to speak. And the other side of it was that she wanted some of that Mahaprasad. She didn't want Krishna to finish it all himself. So, in that meeting, Sudama didn't ask for anything, and Krishna didn't offer anything. Sudama just went home, but when he got there, to what was his very meager dwelling, there was a big palace and so on. So he didn't ask, but Krishna, of his own, gave it. And it's said that Krishna, because Krishna says, Yeyatamam prapadyante, as one surrenders, he reciprocates. So Sudama gave Krishna more than he possessed. So in principle, Krishna should give Sudama more than he possesses. But how can he give Sudama more than he possesses? Because he possesses everything. So in that way, Krishna felt within himself he couldn't really reciprocate properly, but that's what he did. He gave all of that to Sudama. And Sudama, he wasn't so concerned about the opulence, he was more concerned about his Krishna consciousness. And so he prayed to Krishna that, you've given me all of this, in my poverty-stricken condition, I was able to remember you continuously, without any difficulty. And now I'm afraid that with all this opulence, I might forget you. But Krishna gave him the benediction that he could live in that opulence and, remain fully Krishna conscious up to the end.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Thank you. Let's give him a quick round of applause.
Devotees, during Prashadam time, Maharaj will be here. He'll personally sign the books if any member to purchase. Each book is $20. Also, we have 2 DVDs. One DVD is a beautiful movie on the first volume of Lilamrita called Srila
Lifetime in preparation.
lifetime in preparation. Narahari Prabhu's disclaimer. And the second DVD is Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. The live footage, Srila Prabhupada speaking in darshan in Bombay. And those are 15 minutes.
Narrated by me.
We do take cash, check, or credit. And after this, now we're going to offer Aarti to Shri Shri Radha Govinda. And Gurudev Prabhu will all stand up, we'll have kirtan, and the devotees branch if they're requesting.
Thank you very much.
One quick thing, when we are doing the aarti, we have got a lot of flowers, so if you want to, you could take a flower and then offer it to the Lord. And then after your offering, you can keep the flower. We'll put a bucket over here. You can place the flower over there as well. Okay?
Hare Krishna.
His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj ki
Jai.